Kenya in trouble. The election's a mess and trust is running low. Are things about to turn violent, or can the democratic order be restored? This is Roundtable with me, Matthew Moore. Kenya is in political limbo. The election was overturned and a rerun is now in doubt after the main opposition candidate pulled out. Can Kenya recover its political footing, or will it fall back into violence?
An East African powerhouse in political disarray. A rivalry that has lasted more than half a century appears to be over. Veteran politician Raila Odinga is out of the rerun of the presidential race.
We believe that all will be best served by NASA vacating its presidential candidature.
Reaction to his sudden withdrawal has been mixed. In some regions, violence. Confusion in others.
Kenya is for all of us, not for some of us.
With accusations of electoral irregularities and a violent shutdown of opposition voices in the run-up to the ballot, is Kenya's reputation as a stabilising force in the region on the line? After claims of election fraud, a Supreme Court annulment of the result, and then the withdrawal of his greatest opponent, Uhuru Kenyatta appears to have been handed back the leadership of East Africa's largest economy. A second term for the wealthy son of the country's first president. The ruling to rerun the election was widely seen as an ushering in of a new era, restoring faith in the judiciary process.
We want to say we are so happy with the judges, because this is what you are waiting for. This is the big day that you are waiting for.
I recommend the Kenyan Supreme Court should be a candidate for Nobel Peace Award.
But with Odinga's withdrawal, there are fears that politically driven violence might escalate. The 2013 presidential runoff almost drove the country into a civil war. Hundreds were killed. Over 100,000 were displaced from their homes. But Kenya has maintained its role as a stable nation in an unstable region for decades. South Sudan has returned to a civil war. Somalia has become a breeding ground for Al-Qaeda terrorists. Kenya is a nation that the West and the East do not want to fail. Foreign investor interest is robust. And the strategic location of Kenya's port of Mombasa is heavily relied upon by the country's African neighbours. Despite once facing charges at the ICC on crimes against humanity and claims that corruption still remains rife in Kenya's burgeoning economy, Uhuru Kenyatta's approval ratings remain high, both at home and abroad. In Kenya, politics is hard-fought, with victory mostly decided along ethnic lines. As the country faces an uphill battle to stop corruption and political violence, can Kenya retain its position as the beacon of East Africa?
Well, joining us at the round table today is the political analyst Kwame Otiende. And we're joined by Professor Joe Ukimemnam, who is a UN Special Envoy to Africa. Thank you very much for joining us on the round table today. Kwame, if I can start with you. Just last week, you met with Raila Odinga here in London, albeit briefly. Did you get a sense of what his political ambitions are now?
From the meeting, obviously, he'd gone to Chatham House, and then there was a meeting with the Kenyan diaspora at Friend's House in Euston. I got the sense that he is going to take this all the way. He is sure that something will give in terms of the government coming to the negotiation table. And from the point of view of the NASA coalition, they will put a lot more pressure with the protests. And out of the protests, the government will have to concede to some of their demands.
But Odinga, is he out of politics now, having achieved this victory, overturning the election, or is he holding out for something bigger?
He's holding out for the presidency.
So
Yes.
it's not over?
It's not over.
Okay, and what do you make of that?
Well, first of all, I need to qualify that I speak from position of a neutral person who is outside and looking into Kenya. So some of the points that will be made will be coming from that angle. So in terms of Odinga, this gentleman has loads of experience, and he has been there in terms of the theater of political squabbles. He has a lot of tricks up his sleeves, and he pulls them out one at a time. It will be a mistake to think it's over from his point of view. It will equally be a mistake to think that he's going to fight to the deadline, to the red line. So what we have to look at is take him for each episode of trick that he pulls out. For example, he tried to move the election from 26th of October. He tried that after he won the issue at the court to get the election nullified. Now he is campaigning on this angle. Currently, he also wanted to be taken out of the ballot papers, but he hasn't made an official application for that. So what is he playing at?
No, I think...
What is he playing at there? He's trying to make it as more difficult
Odinga
as
came
possible.
out and he had a press conference. He said, I am out.
Yes.
Why didn't he take his name officially off the ballot?
Exactly.
No, I mean, he informed the Independent Electoral Board. He, as a coalition, the whole coalition sent a letter. I think the only difference is that the Independent Electoral Commission are now saying that there's a form 24A that he needs to send.
Okay, all right. So
but that is just it's a technicality.
No, it's not a technicality. No, I disagree with that. It's not a technicality because it's like in court. If you want to appeal, there are a form they call D11. If you don't complete that D11, the court does not recognize that you want to appeal against a particular order.
The door open for a return.
Well, this is the issue I'm talking about. What is he playing at? We have to keep asking that question. If he come out the way he did and say, and make the statement he made, he's got an administrative backup that can complete that simple form.
All right. Let's say that his ambitions then are a little ambiguous. We can't read him at the moment. That's your opinion in any case. Let's go back a little bit to his original complaint. Just explain, what was Odinga's problem with the election?
Okay, so we had the elections, and then obviously the opposition came out and said there were problems with the whole process. They then lodged a case with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court indeed made a ruling that there was a problem with the process. Then the Electoral Commission was given the task of organizing the next elections. Now, from the opposition's point of view, how would we go to a new elections if the problems within the process are not looked into?
And what was the most important problem with the process?
So there were a lot of things. It was, we had servers that was in some European country. No one understands why they're in a European country. We had the ballot papers. They were supposed to have come with some safety marks. During the elections, there was quite a good number of ballot papers that were not found with the safety features. That was a question that was put to the Electoral Commission. If you paid however many billions for these safety features to be produced in France, why did some ballot papers come with safety features? Why did some not have safety features? How do we know the ones that did not have the safety features were not just printed in some print shop?
And the Electoral Commission is not prepared to make the changes required for the next election to satisfy the opposition?
The Electoral Commission now has said that they are willing to make some changes, but not all the changes that the opposition had asked for.
Kenya has overturned the election.
Yes, he did.
Don't you have faith in Kenya's Supreme Court?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I was talking to either yourself or one of your colleagues before this show. It's one of the things that actually puts Kenya up there, you know, in terms of African politics. The fact that, because they became the first country in African politics where the judiciary actually overturned the presidency election.
But you don't agree with the Supreme Court's decision here?
Well, the thing is, you and I mean, I'm a member of Employment Tribunal and I operate on judicial capacity. The issues that made courts take a decision one way or the other generally don't tend to be available to the common eyes to comment on. So the court, in their wisdom, have taken a decision based on the details that was presented to them. And unless you and I have access to those information, we're probably
we do have access to the ruling because the court...
The ruling, but not the details that led to the ruling. That's what I'm talking about.
They spelled out everything that they were looking at. In fact, all the 6 judges told us we had 4 judges that voted for and 2 against. Jackton Ojwang and Njoki Ndung'u voted against. They explained why they voted against. The Chief Justice explained why he thought there was a problem with the process. And he even spelled out that whereas the overall votes might be right, that Uhuru won, fine. But if there's a problem with the process, how then do we agree with the results, right? Because if you have a mathematical formula and somehow you don't get the formula, but you have the answer, then clearly it just, doesn't really make sense.
That might be the case, but how are the international observers supposed to know these details? That's the point I was trying to make.
Even with the international observers, I just have to point out that most international observers are so invested in seeing, Kenya is a stable country. We do not want it to go to war.
All right, so there's an ulterior motive for the West to...
Of course, they want it to be stable.
The election and move on.
They were very
Let me ask you about the election now. Odinga is out. He was really the only serious candidate against Kenyatta. Is it worth having another election now, or should they just...
There will not be elections.
So that's it. Kenyatta is going to be president, and that's it.
If the Electoral Commission does not accede to these issues that were brought up by the opposition, right? What is the point of spending? Now the government is quoting a figure of 6 extra billion shillings. What is the point of spending an extra 6 billion shillings?
There are other people who would run if Odinga doesn't.
They all got less than 10,000 votes. They're non-starters. There's no point having them.
But even that, if the errors you're referring to is that substantial, does it make sense that other parties want to risk ignoring those points which the judges have pointed out and continue to run election in a context of a flawed system? But what I think has happened is that the Electoral Commission has done some work on what they consider to be the big issues in those areas and say to themselves, within the powers they have, to say that this is fit to go to the public for an election and called the election. So you might quibble with the fine details, but the overall picture...
Is there any point in having another election?
Yes, there is a point because it's almost impossible. Even in British election last time, there were issues about some areas and some systems that didn't work as good as they should have worked. But that is not a reason to stop the entire...
Yeah, but this is not just some small issues. One, let me just first answer the question about these other candidates. Yeah. They all know they have no chance of winning, right? Some of them are just there because they want to be there and they want their names to be
but there are many reasons.
But they're not running for any reason.
No, there are many reasons.
It's like having the monster raving loony party run in England.
No, there are many reasons why. No, it's not time wasters at all. There are many reasons why people participate in politics. Winning is only part of it.
Okay.
Winning is only part of it. One, public national exposure is a good enough reasons. You take Nigeria, for example. A lot of people will throw their hat in the ring in the hope that that brings them to national prominence in terms of a big name. And with that, in the next election, they can now capitalize on their fortune.
So
there are many reasons. The point is that they are competing because the opportunity to compete is there.
Okay.
And they did not
say...
So
they're not serious candidates.
No, how can you say... No,
not
at all. I said it's one of the reasons. There could be other reasons. You are giving people a choice. That is serious enough. It's democracy, remember? And you're telling people, look, this is your civic duty, civic right. Because I am going to lose is not a reason for me not to participate. There will be election. There will be an election. Uhuru is determined to go on election. The Constitution backs him up. The fact that it is imperfect is not good enough reason not to go ahead, because what is at stake for not going ahead is much more than what is at stake for going ahead.
It's a one-horse race.
So it's a one-horse race.
Oh, it might be.
It's also an election where the opposition has said we're not going to participate. Uhuru has to try and get legitimacy by having Raila's name there. Without Raila, he has no legitimacy.
Well, Raila's name...
And that is why the government now...
Raila's name is there. It hasn't been taken out.
But Raila said he's not part of it.
Campaigning.
It's his choice. It's his choice. You cannot force the man to participate. If we're doing Olympics, 4x4 relay, and you pull out, that's not a reason why the race cannot go ahead. You cannot say...
You didn't really beat the other contender, did you?
Well, but you beat those who participated, not those who did not participate.
On top of that, let me just point out that the parliament, and in fact, our other guest who was meant to be here, Ichungo, is part of that group that...
part of Kenyatta's party?
Yes, that now has changed the rules. They made electoral reforms just last week to change the rules, the voting rules, right? So how are you in a competition and in between the game you decide to change the rules?
That's a good point, isn't it? You're changing the goalpost.
Well, if you say so and it was that way, they have a choice to go to court and challenge it. That's what the courts are there for. You cannot say, I am not going to pass this candidate because he did not score 100%. That's not the way to proceed.
Kwame, let me ask you a very blunt question. At the moment, is Kenya's democracy dead?
I think that, first of all, the word democracy is quite a loaded term, right? What do we consider democracy?
Let's say the ability of Kenyans to choose their president. Has that been taken away?
I think it has been taken away. I think also our democracy, the way it works, is that maybe on the lower levels, it worked okay. For example, people who voted for MP got the MPs they wanted. But where the games are being played at the top level, so people voting for president did not get who they wanted, right? Now, I'm not saying that Uhuru is not popular or Raila is not. They're both popular. But what I'm saying is that the process was not free and fair.
I just want to add to that. When you talk about democracy in Kenya, and you're right, you pointed out that it is loaded. There are a lot of things you get out of democracy. For example, participation of the grassroots is a key outcome in democratic process, because to get people who are not engaging to come out and exercise their franchise, their civic duty in political democracy is a big outcome. And if you or the exercise was able to bring out what I call virgin voters to come up in their thousands to participate, we should take that. It's not only when the presidency is decided. That's not the only time you count pluses.
Looking on the right side.
No,
absolutely.
No, I think that that works in a country like England, for example, where the government actually delivers to the population, right?
Does it? Which
no,
governments?
but to a certain extent, you have functional roads, you have functional transport, you have functional healthcare.
Like Brexit.
That doesn't. Brexit is completely outside the picture. But the point is that in a country, in most African countries, where politics is still a bread and butter issue, where if you're in the wrong party and the wrong president comes in, you know that government funds will not be sent to your region. That means you're going to be in poverty for the next 5 years. you want to see the right person get into power.
But that
because
is
that
also,
actually affects...
Let me move on.
Yeah, but that is also the reason why, if you know that if you don't participate and your person is not there, that you are out in limbo for 5 years, it sends a clear message to you.
But if you
to get
participate, your person still doesn't win anyway. So
yeah, but it now takes you to the drawing board.
Let me ask you about a very serious issue that could come out of this situation. The potential for violence. Are you worried about that?
I am deeply concerned about that because any life is one too many. And the potential for violence in Kenya is real as we speak. As we speak, arms are going into Kenya in preparation for violence. The police have taken some preemptive actions and they are busting certain warehouses where they have been tipped off. But what they have not done is, again, subject to resources. They have not got the resources to intercept the trail of arms that are on their way to Kenya as we speak. They have not got the resources because everybody is concentrating on rioting and preventing the disturbances.
Just to underline this point for our viewers at home, you're saying there are weapons coming into Kenya
as we speak
in preparation for potential confrontation.
This is why I say to you that Odinga has got different options open to him and up his sleeves.
You're saying that one of those options may be an armed conflict.
May not be, but he has to be ready.
I think the implication is quite clear that weapons are coming into Kenya and who's importing them? Raila Odinga.
And who's importing them?
I don't know where he got that from, but weapons coming into the country. I mean, has this been reported anywhere? Has it been in the news?
Do you want me to quote my source before you take it from me?
No.
Exactly.
I think that is a figment of his imagination.
Okay,
like
a figment of my imagination. Could that be also the reported cases of police having busted few millionaires' hideouts and revealed caches of arms? Is that also where did that happen, first of all? And that could be related to other things, could be related to drugs. I mean, Kenya now is a major transit point for drugs. I mean,
you think the opposition isn't preparing for armed conflict?
No. In fact,
can
I just finish?
Yeah, in a minute. Those you said it could be for drugs, but those equipments can easily be turned to other uses.
Yes, but just because the police found some arms in some house does not mean that has anything to do with the opposition.
Then what means anything?
In fact, if they had anything to do with the opposition, don't you think the government would be very quick to go and arrest whichever opposition leaders that he thinks were responsible? How is it that the opposition...
He set out a clear warning. He has.
Kenyatta has. Where do you think these weapons are coming from? State actors, non-state actors? And who's paying for them?
No, it's really non-state actors because they are the spoilers. There's a record, this history of this happening in various African countries.
And why? What is their interest in providing arms to the opposition in Kenya?
Well, okay, you look at it from a business point of view, okay? From a business point of view, they supply arms, not only in Kenya, but other African countries. I have been in a situation where they come in with a fish net full of arms and drop it at a desert and credit it to the debts African countries have. Where do you think African countries' debts, where did they emerge from? One is by stealing, but the more is from all these illegal arms. And they get credited to the government of that particular country. So if the opposition, I'm not saying it is, but if the opposition is linked to that and eventually come to power, now what you see is that these people who supplied those things come back for their pay. But the most dangerous part,
what does that have to do with the elections? I mean,
it has election. People are preparing for the worst scenario.
They're preparing for the worst case scenario.
Exactly.
Let me ask you, Kwame, because we're running out of time now. What do you think will happen in the next few months in Kenya with this political vacuum, illegitimacy claim and counterclaim? Do you think it's going to get violent?
I mean, it could get violent not because some arms are appearing from nowhere, but it could get violent because currently the way the police have been dealing with protests, which are legal and constitutional, right? is going to put a lot of people backed on a corner, and they will decide to retaliate. Now, as it stands, all the deaths, if we were to talk about any violence that has been seen in Kenya, has been because of extrajudicial killings by the police, right? There has not been any communal violence or ethnic violence of one ethnic group targeting another. It has solely been the police killing.
But do you fear it could be?
It could be, yes, but it can only happen.
Just in a word, because we're wrapping up now.
Yes, it can only happen because the government, through the police, has been killing opposition protesters.
Okay, but is there a threat of civil war, yes or no?
I do not think there's a threat of civil war. I think that our politicians will not let that happen.
Do you have fear of civil war?
I fear for the worst, but I hope for the best.
Okay, Professor Joe Okemenan, thank you very much for your contribution to the Roundtable, and Kwame Otiende, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Well, stability is crucial for a country to prosper and lead a region. And all those with a vested interest in Kenya are, of course, hoping that peace prevails. But right now, it seems impossible to predict for sure what will happen in Kenya over the next few months. You've been watching Roundtable with me, Matthew Moore. Thank you.